Hey everyone, today I'm talking about something that a lot of you guys have been asking for, and that is talking through every single game that currently has my elite shield. Now, if you're not aware, on my channel I give out two types of commendations. The first of which is a shield of quality, which basically means that I rate the game at least a 7 out of 10. They're games that I would pretty much play anytime. I think they're solid, quality designs. And a second of which is my Elite Shield, which are pretty much my favourite games ever. I think these games are something special. Now, I think before I even go into the video, I want to kind of give a bit of substantiation to my ratings, because I think in general I rate things and skew things a little bit harsher than the Board Game Geek ratings. Like, for example, a 7 for me is pretty much an 8 on the Board Game Geek scale, and the same goes for like a 6 and a 7 and so on. So again, this kind of gives a bit more pedigree to these highest rated games, because I think they're pretty exceptional. And additionally, this is not set in concrete. You know, sometimes games do slightly fall out of favour from me. If they have reached that elite bracket, that is quite rare. I think it's only ever happened once or twice where a game will slip from an 8.5 maybe down to an 8, but it has happened. But at the moment, I think it's a really good time to do this list, because currently I only have 50 games that I rate 8.5 and above. And something I should say is that these games are going to be in alphabetical order. So the first game that has my Elite Shield is Amerigo by Stefan Feld. This is an awesome game that utilises a dice tower. As you're placing these cubes in this tower, and they're going to kind of filter through this tower. Some are going to get stuck, some are going to come through, and all these different coloured cubes are going to associate to a different action. So you've got ones that will kind of help you fight off pirates, you've got ones that will give you upgrades, just a ton of things you can do, a lot of fun, probably one of the best Euro games in terms of fun factor. The next game is AquaSphere, another Stefan Feld game, certainly a lesser known one, with a programming edge to it. You basically have two factors of the game, one of which you're planning your route and what you're going to do, and the other of which is going to be the actions you're taking. You are going to be building a bit of an engine up, you're going to be trying to control different areas of this kind of submarine thing. Quite a weird game, but it's a hell of a lot of fun to play and highly underrated in my opinion. The next one is a colossal hit with Arc Nova, one of the more recent games that's gained my Elite Shield. I was completely blown away with how good this one was, despite the level of hype that had already been built around it at the time. This one, you are building up a zoo, you have a great engine building element to this game. You're building more and more cars, collecting more animals, building the enclosures, getting kind of grants and things, and sending off these animals to conservations. Just an absolute joy to play. It's a little bit long, but I think it's worth it. That is Arc Nova. Also have Awkward Guests. So Awkward Guests, definitely my favourite deduction style game. Really dynamic game as you're trying to solve this murder mystery. But the way you use these clues cards is fantastic, as you're literally ticking things off the sheet, and you can even like close routes off, so you know the possibilities that the murder could have gone. Some will give each other alibis, some will lie to you. Brilliant deduction game. That is Awkward Guests. Also, Babylonia. This one has recently climbed up to an Elite Shield. The more I play this one, the more I'm enjoying it. This is a semi-recent Reiner Knizia route building style game. It kind of feels a bit like Through the Desert and Blue Lagoon, but for me this one is a lot better, as you're trying to connect your tokens together and get points in lots of different ways. An absolute blast and elegant experience. Also, Barrage. So Barrage, definitely my favourite game of last year, or I played it for the first time last year. This is a pretty heavy, cutthroat, confrontational, economic game, as you're trying to utilise water coming down this mountain, but you can cut people off and build your dams above them to stop them getting any resources. Also, a third Stefan Feld game with Bonfire. Love this one. This one is a game I'm absolutely terrible at, but it's one where you're basically choosing the missions you're going to complete throughout the game. You have this really cool kind of synergy-driven board where you want to get the bonfires, you want to get these pathways, and you want to guide these kind of spirits up to these bonfires. Everything connects together wonderfully in this game, and it's a great, tough and restrictive point salad game. Also, another recent-ish game with Boone Lake. Definitely one of my favourite games to be released in 2021. This is an Alexander Pfister engine building style game with loads of cool combos. And it has this cool river system where you can travel down and collect bonuses as you go. And I love the action selection system as well, as you're using this action strip, which will give you an action, but it also gives everybody else an action. And that strip will go to the bottom of this kind of track. and basically if somebody chooses that action again back to back, then they're going to get a little bit of a punishment for doing so. Really clever game. Also a fourth Steffenfeld game with Bora Bora. This is just a brilliant dice-driven Euro. Kind of works in a worker placement style way, but I love the way that the dice work with each other in this one. So you can use the higher value dice to get more powerful actions. However, once you place a dice on one of these actions, any future dice or die has to be of a lower value. So the lower die are really flexible, but the higher ones are more powerful but are less flexible. I love that kind of that conflicting mechanism there. A lot of fun, and just looking forward to that game being reprinted and being more widely accessible. Next one is Brass Birmingham. This game is just absolutely phenomenal. Another economic style game. I love the way the resources work in this game, as you can use not only your resources but utilize other people's as well. But if you use their resources, they might flip their buildings over and start generating a points engine. Genius design. Also, probably one of the lightest games to get my Elite Shield. This is Capital Lux 2 Generations. Probably the finest and most sophisticated card game I've ever played. Really streamlined, different game modes, but all these game modes work perfectly. It's basically a game of blackjack, but with a moving target. But every time you are trying to change this target you're aiming towards, you get a unique benefit for doing so, or it might even be a hindrance. Brilliant design, and another one that's massively overlooked. Just phenomenal. Next one, another Steffenfeld game with the Castles of Burgundy. This is probably Feld's most popular game. Actually, it is Feld's most popular game by a long shot. A new version coming out of this one very soon. This is another dice-driven Euro, as you're allocating these dice to collect tiles and place them on your personal board and getting combos and unique benefits galore. Just a lot of fun to play. Also, a recent addition to this list is Caelus. This is a more traditional throwback worker placement game that's very cutthroat. As you are basically placing your workers on these buildings and getting resources to contribute to this church. Money in this game is extremely tight, and if people pass before you, you have to start paying more and more money. But there are ways to get around that. You can buy buildings for yourself, which means that when people use your buildings, you'll get points. Just a brilliantly refined, fine-tuned game that's really stood the test of time. The next one is another big grower for me, and certainly the most social game on this list. This is Chinatown. Chinatown, one of the most interactive, best negotiation games out there. You're basically trying to claim these different spots on the board. You can wager anything, you can trade anything with any other player, and you're basically trying to build a big kind of shop front of the same type of shop to generate income. And you have to really work out what you're going to earn, what you're willing to pass, and how much everything is worth. Brilliant economic negotiation game. Next up is Coimbra. I think this is one of the first dice-driven games, and there are quite a few of these dice-driven Euros on this list because I love that style of gameplay. With this one, you are drafting dice, and you're using those dice to claim cards, but also to climb tracks as well. And I love the way that the colour of the dice is important, the pip value is important, and everything just synergises wonderfully in this beautiful looking Euro. Next we have Concordia. So where would this list be without Concordia? One of the most elegant games out there. A very simple game in its at face value, as you're just playing cards and resolving the action from that card. You're travelling around a map, building up these trade houses, generating resources. But I love the way you actually build up your scoring pool as the game goes on, and what you're going to score is tailored towards your needs. Also, a game of For Sale is on this list. So For Sale, one of the first filler games I ever purchased, and still one of the best. Consistently hits the table. A brilliant auction game, and a faultless filler game. Definitely an essential for anyone's collection. That is For Sale. Also, Glen to Chronicles. Probably, or at least one of my favourite tile placement games. Best example of a time track ratchet system where you can go as far as you want, but you cannot go back on yourself. An absolute blast. Also, Goa. Certainly a game that's been lost to the annals of time. An older Rudiger Dawn design, as you're building up this engine based on these different categories. And I love the auction system in this game, as you are pre-planning all the different tiles that are bought. But if somebody buys the tile that you selected, then you get the money. But if you buy it yourself, then the money goes to the bank, but you also get to buy it at a little bit of a discount. ultra intelligent game. Also, Grand Austria Hotel, another dice-driven style Euro, but this one does work differently as you are rolling a cluster of dice and they're all allocated to different actions. And that means that some of these actions are going to be a lot more common, but they're going to be more powerful. And you've got the rarer ones, which there might only be one option to take, but it's going to be weaker because a lot of these values are based on how many dice are already in that pool. And you're basically trying to welcome these guests into your hotel. You're trying to feed and water them and then send them off to the rooms and get benefits and kind of combos for doing so. Brilliant game. Also, my favourite game of all time at this time, this is El Grande. Of course, you're probably expecting El Grande to be on this. El Grande, the granddaddy of area majority style games, just as good as an interactive, old school area majority game can get. Still the best one out there, and it's over 25 years old. Also, Hanamikoji, a very simple I split, you choose style game, fine-tuned to the smallest degree you could imagine. The smallest mistake can cost you greatly, but still one of the best two-player games out there by far. Also, Hansa Teutonica. I have the big box version, but I've still only played the original map. That's more than enough. Another example of an elegant game as you're trying to build these routes, connecting these points together, and establishing some presence in these regions and generating points. But I love the degree of engine building in this game, as you can start placing more discs down, or you can take discs back into your pool quicker, or start generating more points. Brilliant game. That is Hansa Teutonica. Also, Istanbul. This game has really kind of stood the test of time for me. Again, one of the first Euros I've played, still sits here on my shelf. I do think the expansions have helped a lot with this one, as you're basically travelling around this grid of tiles, and it has this racing element to it, as you're trying to be the first to collect a certain amount of these rubies, and you can get these rubies in a ton of different ways. That's Istanbul. The next game is Keyflower, another game that definitely ranked highly on the games that were new to me last year. This one is probably one of my favourite worker placement games out there, with a great economic feel to it. But the economy in this game is based on the meeples themselves, as you're using them to bid for these different tiles. You can also use them to claim other people's action spots on tiles they previously claimed. However, they will get the meeple in the next round to use against you. Love that system, and it's absolutely genius. We have Las Vegas Royale, simple dice rolling fun, lots of little mini games that has a real kind of high energy feel to it, and another essential game for me. I think should be in everyone's collection, and I've yet to have a single bad game of Las Vegas Royale. Also, Lorenzo il Magnifico. This has been kind of a top tier game for me for many years. I think it's ranked in the top 3 for probably the last 4 years or so. Another worker placement game, but the worker placement or the strength of your workers are based on dice rolls. However, that applies to everybody. So if the orange dice has rolled a 5, that means everybody's orange worker is strength 5. And you'll be collecting these cards and building an engine, generating a ton of resources and getting points in a ton of different ways. Also, Mandala, which is definitely one of the lightest games on my Elite Shield list or roster. This is a brilliant, timeless feeling design where you are playing these cards to bid for other cards and collecting different sets. However, the order in which you collect these sets is important, because the ones you collect later are worth way more points than the ones you collect earlier. Genius design. The next game is Maracaibo, which is the second Alexander Pfister game on this list. I think this game is better than Boonleg, but it does have a lot of shared DNA. As you're basically travelling around, I think it's the Caribbean islands, you have this multiple use card system, as you can use them to complete objectives or quests. You can use them for the helpers themselves, and you can build up this great engine of cards. And it has a real kind of cool player tension to it, where the pacing of the game is really dictated by the players rather than the game itself. So you need to be kind of on the ball to know when to jump forward and know when to hold back. Lots to explore here, and it's pretty much one of those kitchen sink style games where pretty much every mechanism happens to be in the game, but somehow it manages to work. Also, Marco Polo 2. So I actually prefer the second Marco Polo more than the first one. This is more of a simple dice placement game, but I think this is really well polished. I'm just collecting resources, fulfilling contracts, travelling around this map, collecting new contracts and things. Just a real nice blend of mechanisms, and one that's surprisingly easy to teach and enjoy. The next game is Messina 1347, which I think is the most recent game I've played on this list. This one is a Vladimir Suki design as you're trying to move around this grid of tiles and fight off the Black Plague. You're generating this kind of ticking point engine. You are trying to repopulate the city once you've kind of eradicated the disease. A real cool comborific style game. And when I reviewed this one, I did kind of err on the side of caution and gave it a really strong shield of quality. But since then, I think I have said, you know what, I'm going to give this the benefit of the doubt and give it my elite shield. Navegador is the next game, which is another design by Mac Gertz, who designed Concordia. This one, another game that has a lot of shared DNA with Concordia, but I do definitely feel they're different enough. This is a more traditional Mac Gertz Rondel style game, as you have the supply and demand board. You're travelling around the world basically using these boats, setting up these colonies and plantations. What a wonderful scoring system, as you can, much like Concordia, you can tailor your endgame scoring to what you've done in the game. Another game that I think gets overlooked is Newton. Just a really well-rounded Euro game about climbing tracks. Has a great card playing system as you are playing these cards down and activating all the different actions. However, at the end of the round, you're tucking one of those cards under your board, meaning that the kind of strength of that particular action is amplified by 1 the next time you play it. So it has a nice satisfying crescendo as the game goes on. And the next one is another Stefan Feld game. You know, forgive me, I'm a big Feld fan. This is the Oracle of Delphi. For me, this is one of his best games. This is a pick up and deliver racing style game as you have a bunch of objectives that you need to complete. Some of them are picking up statues, dropping them to other places. Some of them are slaying monsters. But I love the way that as the game goes on, you can start to build up these god powers and use them when it's most efficient for you to do that, such as teleporting across the board or killing monsters for free. And you even build up these powers on other people's turns. Definitely as good as a pick up and deliver game goes. And if you like Castles of Burgundy, this is one that I definitely think you should check out because it has a lot of similarity in terms of the dice system. Another Vladimir Suki game appears now with Praga Caporegni, which I think was my favourite game of 2020. A brilliant comborific style game where this affects this, affects this, affects this. Brilliant, satisfying turns. Has this great action crane system as you're drafting an action and you can take one of these 2 actions from it, but when you take it, it's going to go right back to the beginning and make it less inviting for you to take again. What a wonderful, well-rounded Euro. It doesn't terribly do anything new, but what it does to an ultra-high standard. We have a classic now with Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico, widely considered one of the best games ever made, and I happen to agree with that. One of the kind of pioneers that used the action selection system, where you take an action, but everybody else gets a slightly worse version of that action. And you're basically trying to build up a plantation, get the crops and stuff from those plantations and send them off in boats to get victory points. However, the order in which you resolve these actions is so important because you want to be helping yourself more than you're helping your opponents, of course. But doing that is a lot harder than it sounds. Another Vladimir Suki game now with Pulsar 2849. Now, you know this game must be good because it is of a space theme. I very rarely play space themed games, but this game is so good that it completely trumps that. So this is a dice placement game. You've got a ton of different options you can do. You're flying your ship around and visiting planets. You're getting new technologies. And you have this great initiative system where you can push and pull based on the dice you're drafting. So many things you can do and not enough time to do it. Something different now with the Resistance Avalon, still by far my favourite social deduction style game. I just think the way that all the different roles interact with each other in this game is beyond genius, and I've definitely had some of my best moments ever in gaming when playing the Resistance Avalon. The next game is Rococo. This is a kind of a mid-weight area majority style game. However, there is quite a lot more going onto it than that, particularly through the use of cards, as you have a hand of cards which you could add to throughout the game, and then you're going to use these cards not only to get the bonus on them, but to basically allow you access to certain actions you can take, because these actions are broken down into 3 different categories. You've got like your master actions, you've got your journeyman actions, and you've got your apprentice actions. And then you're going to be collecting these fabrics and building these clothing and dressing these nobles in this clothing and putting them in these ballrooms to get victory points. And it's just a real simple area majority game that works very well. Another dice drafting game now with Signorie by Watch Your Game. Now this is definitely one of the dice drafters out there that I never hear anybody talking about, but it has some pretty cool mechanisms and twists with this game that I haven't seen before, such as when you draft these dice, you want the higher values because the higher values actually mean it's cheaper for you and you don't have to pay a certain amount of coins. But the lower values means they're more expensive to you. So you might think, why don't I always take the higher dice? And that is because if you go over a certain threshold, then you do not, or you forsake a benefit that you can get by staying below that value. Love that system. You're building up a great engine as well as the game goes on. You are constantly producing offspring from your noble family, sending your daughters off to get married with other families, and kind of sending your sons off to climb a bunch of different tracks to get points. Teotihuacan is the next game. Now this is one I was actually a little bit apprehensive on when I first played it. But since then, this has gone from strength to strength. Another dice drafting game, so as I said, I do like dice drafters. But this one has this cool mechanism where at certain times, certain colours of dice are more powerful than others. You're playing a bunch of different mini games which synergise with each other, and it's kind of all that traditional Daniel Tashini dice-driven goodness. And the same applies to Teotihuacan, another Daniel Tashini game. This one has certainly taken off way more than I thought it would do because it is quite a heavy, complex game. But for some reason, this one seems to resonate with people, and I think it's brilliant. You basically have a rondel. You're going around using your dice and landing on these spots, taking a bunch of resources or climbing tracks or building up this kind of big pyramid of Mayong tiles and getting points in a bunch of different ways. I love the way your dice kind of upgrade as the game goes on, and they'll eventually get so strong that they will die, and then you'll get a bonus for doing so and kind of reset the process. Loads of things to explore here, a lot of expansion content, and it's all really good. The next game is Terra Mystica, which is one of those games where you want to be unlocking more and more things from your player board and gaining more income. However, this one was a bit trickier because when you upgrade buildings, you're putting the old buildings back onto your player board, which will reduce your income again. And again, you are climbing tracks. You're trying to terraform this land so that your unique race can inhabit it. And all the races have different powers, strengths and weaknesses. A ton of things to explore here. And to be honest, I barely scratched the surface with Terra Mystica. I know it's definitely one of those games where you can get probably 100 plays from it, and I've still got so much ahead of me. But at the moment, I love this game. That is Terra Mystica. We have the second Martin Wallace game now with Tinner's Trail. Now, I wasn't quite sure what to expect with this one, but it ended up being a massive hit for me. Another economic game, but this one is much lighter than something like Brass Birmingham. This one, you are essentially bidding on these different mines to try and extract the minerals from them. But whenever you extract these minerals, you're going to start generating more and more water. And water makes it really expensive for you to extract those minerals. So you have to invest in this machinery and things to pump more water out of the system to make it more cost efficient. I love this time track system where certain actions will take more time than others, and everyone else will keep taking turns until they catch back up with you. Just a really streamlined, straightforward game that mixes a more fun experience, but with some pretty cool mechanisms, particularly when it comes to the scoring, where you actually have to buy your victory points. But money, of course, is a very valuable resource. The next game is Trajan, which is the final Stefan Feld game on this list. Trajan, definitely my favourite Feld game. I think this game is genius. It's more of a series of mini games which blend with each other through this Mandala system as you're picking up these tokens, dropping them one off at a time in these different action bowls, and the one you end in is the action you take. However, there's kind of another layer to that as you want to line up these colours to get these follow-up bonuses. Just an absolute kind of kaleidoscope of a game. So strategic, just an absolute onion in terms of the layers to this game. Absolutely beyond genius. That is Trajan. The next game is definitely the heaviest one on my elite roster. This is Trismegistus, which is actually another dice drafting game by Daniele Tashini. This one, however, takes dice drafting to a whole new dimension as you are factoring in 3 different types of information. You want the symbol of the dice, you want the colour, and you also want the number in the pool as well. And all these are very important. It's got this engine building thing to it as you are building up these different elements to stronger versions of them, fulfilling contracts, and doing a bunch of different fallout actions. So a very complex game, but it's definitely worth the effort. Another Daniele Tashini game now with Tzolk'in the Mayan calendar, which was actually one of the first Euro games I ever played and still one of my favourites. So this one takes worker dimension to a whole new space, as you have this series of gears in these different parts of the board and they're all interconnected. And all you're going to do on your turn is you're either going to put workers on the board or you're going to take them off. However, at the end of each round, these gears are going to rotate and offer you more powerful rewards as you go. So the longer you leave things on the board, it means you are going to start generating more better and better resources. However, you are forced to take something off the board or add something every single round. So you do have to make sure you make the right decision and line things up perfectly. On to the last couple of games now. The first one being Ultimate Railroads, or Russian Railroads essentially. I've only played the Russian Railroads version, but this game really did blow me away. Another worker placement game, which surprises me actually, because I didn't realise how many worker placement games I rate this highly. The Ultimate Railroads does things completely differently, as you are climbing up these tracks with these different colours of train tracks, and all these tracks are going to score you a different amount of points, and the ones you build later are worth more points than the earlier ones. However, you have to move everything up together because there's no room to manoeuvre otherwise. And then you're building up this kind of engine of collecting these factories. You have to make sure you build these trains because you don't start generating the points unless they are covered by a train. Hard game to explain, at least verbally. It's not too difficult in practice, but it does certainly feel different, and it really does shower you in points, and it feels like a really satisfying game by the end of it. And the final game with my elite shield is Underwater City. So another Vladimir Suki game. Again, I don't know how many games of his I've had on this list. Underwater Cities, Pulsar 2849, Praga Cup at Renyi, Messina 1347. This guy just seems to deliver games that are just almost tailor-made for me. I love the domino effect of his style of games. And Underwater Cities might be the strongest example of an engine builder I have in my collection, constantly building out a tableau of cards to improve your gameplay and to make you more efficient and stronger, and it's just an absolute blast to play. That is Underwater Cities. So there we go, those are the 50 board games with my elite shield. It might have taken a bit longer than I expected it to, but hopefully it's been of use to you. As always, if you enjoyed the video, please be sure to hit like and subscribe to my channel and check out my other videos too. And for everyone else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye bye.